I wanted to make a longer video of me talking, and I wanted to talk about nihilism. Most people are just not getting it. I'm talking about nihilism in the organizational or cultural sense. Nihilism is that which degrades or inhibits some value from giving order to life. There are two forms of nihilism in the West today. One is collectivist, called with things like communism, secular humanism, social progress, socialism. And in America, we call them liberals. The opposite form is individualism, libertarianism, anarchism, anti-statism, capitalism, free markets. Now, when Satter talked about these two forms, he would call the individualistic form of nihilism as masculine nihilism and the collectivist form as feminine nihilism. Both forms of nihilism can be, in my view, summed up with one word each. The collectivist stand for equality. The individualistic form stands for freedom. When we look at the two values of freedom and equality, what do these values represent? These are the values of anti-value. They do not stand for anything in and of themselves. Intrinsically, they are the nil, the zero, the nothing. They are both nihilistic. For the collectivist form, if everything is equal, then nothing is valuable. And for the individualistic form, freedom. Freedom means the freedom from rules, from restrictions, and in a word, the breaking up of the order of society because the rules feel too stifling for people. The reason people cling to one of these two forms of nihilism is because of the way that the society or the culture makes them feel. The collectivists feel weak, effete, inferior. They can't accomplish much of anything in this society, so they want to shift the responsibility onto everyone. They dream of a future perfect heaven on earth, where the past is irrelevant, where your genes don't matter, and where class doesn't exist. Political correctness is one way of gradually removing the measuring stick from society. If the words used to express ideas no longer exist, then eventually the ideas that they represent will fade away. If we look at the complexity of language in Europe, for example, 200 years ago compared with today, it has to be admitted that the language has become degraded, just as it was in Rome, into a simple, vulgarized form. Collectivists want to destroy or remove the measuring stick of life because they don't make the mark. It is their way of avoiding taking responsibility for their own lives and working to constructively change their deficiencies. If you look today at these losers and the quote-unquote work that they are doing with social progress, these sort of self-created tasks that they give them something to do. It gives them a feeling of accomplishment to pass some new form of anti-discrimination legislation or protest a coffee shop for not giving a gay couple service, or debate the importance of vegetarianism, or throw paint at someone wearing a fur coat. These petty, vulgar, low-class problems are the only things that they are capable of accomplishing. The individualistic form of nihilism is the opposite. This form feels stifled by the rules of society and want to break them down so that they will have room to create their own forms of order out of the ashes of the culture that they have destroyed. One of the best examples of this is the push for the breakdown of national borders. This type wants to have no barriers in their pursuit of market expansion. They want to have as many customers as possible. I'm often reminded of Milton Friedman talking about how capitalism will lead to world peace, the end of racism, and to endless scientific progress if we would but end all constraints to the market. This is today called globalization. Globalization is destroying the identities of people around the world because it is making the entire earth one uniform, homogeneous mob of people. Everywhere I go in the world, the major cities all look exactly the same multicultural mass of people using the same common language. The buildings all look exactly the same 10 or 20 multinational corporations are everywhere. The same awful American music is played in the bars in every country in the world. All local character is to be exterminated, not intentionally, but incidentally, in the pursuit of maximum profits. If you look, for example, United States today, it doesn't really matter where you go. You can go to Florida, upstate New York, uh, Washington State, Ohio, Texas. You can hardly tell the difference at all anymore today. The same 20 companies are everywhere. Everything looks exactly the same. Everything has been standardized. And it destroys really a local identity. People don't really feel like they have a character from where they live any longer. Both forms of nihilism are the result of a life that can no longer bear reality. It ignores traditions and experience because that dampens their optimism in a future perfect heaven on earth. Looking around today, most people that I encounter have no sense of identity, self-esteem, no ego, no I, no pride in oneself. Today people identify themselves with a formula, a system, or an ideology instead of taking responsibility for their own lives and their own identity. Goethe said, "Trust yourself and you will know how to live." What he means by that is that we don't need to look to Ayn Rand, Milton Friedman, or fringe elements to give us permission to be ourselves, to live and pursue the life that we want for ourselves and should demand of ourselves. People who look to ethics to give meaning to their lives no longer want to be. They no longer want to accept the heavy responsibility of being themselves and the intense work that requires.